Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take crucial sources you share and, well, really try to distill them into genuine understanding.
That's the goal.
And today, we're taking a deep dive into Ethiopia. We're looking at a really profound contradiction, actually, right at the heart of its modern political structure.
It's a fascinating and, frankly, troubling situation.
Our mission here is to unpack the, let's say, complex socio-political setup and spatial organization that came about after 1991. We want to focus specifically on the experience of, well, millions of citizens who hold a mixed ethnic identity.
Right.
And this isn't just abstract policy talk. It's about the very real, often hidden human cost when a state imposes a rigid, singular identity onto what is actually a very fluid, multicultural reality.
And what's striking in the sources you've gathered is the historical irony. I mean, people of mixed ethnic identity, known locally as Wuhid Manenet, they've been part of Ethiopia for centuries.
Right.
Historically, they were actually a binding force, fostering connections between Ethiopia's, 80-plus ethnic groups. They were, in a cultural sense, a real national asset.
A unifying element.
Exactly. But then, after 1991, everything shifted. The new political structure built on ethno-nationalism. Well, it fundamentally excluded this crucial population. Your sources use a really chilling phrase for it. They were treated as an erasable category.
Erasable. Wow. Okay, let's unpack that. How is this exclusion actually engineered? What was the mechanism?
Well, the main tool for this fragmentation was the Kilo system.
Kilo, right. For our listeners, maybe think of Kilo as sort of powerful ethnic enclaves or reservations.
That's a good way to put it. It was established by the ruling EPRDF regime and then formally locked in by the 1995 Constitution.
So constitutionally enshrined.
Yes. And crucially, this wasn't just redrawing some administrative lines. The core idea driving it was a simple but quite devastating formula.
Yeah.
One language, one identity, one territory.
One size fits all, essentially.
Pretty much. But the piece that really guaranteed exclusion, the key mechanism, was relying only on patrilineal affiliation. That was the sole legitimate way to define relatedness in the eyes of the state.
Okay, patrilineal. That sounds maybe a bit academic, but the effect on the ground must have been huge. Can you walk us through that? Like, if you have a mixed family, say, Oromo father, Amhara mother, how does that patrilineal rule actually play out for the child and for the mother?
It creates an immediate split, an institutional fissure. The child, according to the state, is recognized only as Oromo.
Only through the father.
Correct. Their identity, their rights, even potential land claims are traced solely through the father's line. The mother's Amhara identity or any other heritage she has is just institutionally erased from that family's official ethnic classification.
So the system literally forces a single identity onto a reality that's inherently mixed.
That's precisely how it functions. It imposes singularity onto plurality.
And we're not talking about a small group of people being excluded here. The sources suggest several million mixed ethnic people live within this framework that's designed to basically ignore them.
Right, which makes the official data just baffling.
Yeah, look at the 2007 census. It reported this absurdly low number, only 36,524 people as being from different parents.
36,000.
I know. And our sources flat out call this number fabricated, wildly unrepresentative. Some estimates suggest there might be over 1 million mixed ethnic people just in Addis Ababa alone.
So you have to ask, right, if the government likely knows the figure is way off, what's the point of publishing it?
Political messaging.
Exactly. It sends a clear message. This group is statistically insignificant. By keeping the official number artificially low, the state reinforces its Khalil structure. It implies, look, there aren't enough mixed people to even worry about needing a different system or constitutional recognition.
Wow. That denial, that institutional gaslighting almost, it must take a huge psychological toll. Your sources mention this concept of double consciousness. What does that actually feel like for someone living with Wuhid Manenet?
Well, it means you're constantly pressured to define yourself using this rigid, often irrelevant FWIT criterion.
Yeah.
You're forced to look at your own identity through this inadequate single lens.
Like on forms, maybe?
Yeah.
Job applications?
Absolutely. School registrations, official documents. You might have to tick one box that simply doesn't reflect your family, your upbringing, your lived experience. You're constantly navigating these two worlds.
A diverse world at home.
Right, the relational world of your family, and then the singular required world imposed by the state. And those two worlds are fundamentally in conflict.
Here's where it gets really, really interesting for me, because the system doesn't just hit the individual. It seems to target the very foundation of society, the family unit itself. I mean, the 1995 Constitution, Article 34, Clause 3, it actually proclaims the family as the natural and fundamental unit of society, saying it's entitled to state protection.
The irony is thick, isn't it?
It really is, because
Mhm.
the way the Khalil system enforces that single ethnic identity, it makes the mixed family its very first casualty.
And this is where the deeply patriarchal nature of the exclusion really comes into focus. The harm to women becomes incredibly clear.
Because of the patrilineal rule again.
Exactly. As we said, mandating patrilineal affiliation makes the mother's ethnic identity officially irrelevant to her family's political standing or her children's rights and identity in the eyes of the state. She's effectively denied a legitimate defining place within her own household's official classification.
That's devastating.
And it's not just theory, it's lived reality. The sources share this incredibly powerful anecdote from an elderly woman, participant #21.
What did she say?
After her children were instructed they had to identify only with their father's ethnic group, she expressed this profound sense of erasure. She said she felt, quote, not a mother to my own children and a wife to my own husband, but a burden to them all.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. Like, the system itself diminished her role, her very being within her family.
It reduced her maternal role, a source of identity for millennia, to basically an inconvenience within the state's neat ethnic boxes.
And the exclusion, it's not just emotional, is it? It hits survival, livelihoods.
Absolutely. The Kilo policy ties things like employment, even property ownership in some areas, directly to language fluency within that specific region.
So it doesn't matter if you have mixed heritage or even if you were born and raised somewhere. If you're in the Oromia Kilo, for instance, but you don't speak Oromo fluently enough.
You can face serious barriers.
Yeah.
Joblessness, professional marginalization.
Oh.
Even if your father was Oromo. We see this so clearly in the experience of another person. Participant #24. They grew up in a military family, moved all over Ethiopia, had like 3 different places they considered home.
Okay.
But because of this new spatial arrangement, this Khalil system, none of those places were officially theirs under the single ethnic rule. Participant #24 described feeling, quote, completely homeless. The state had effectively severed their connection to place.
Completely homeless. That's powerful. To really grasp how radical this shift was, maybe we should spend a moment contrasting how Ethiopia used to organize its space versus this Kilo system.
Yes, that's crucial historical context. Before 1991, Ethiopia used the Kifl-Hager system.
Kifl-Hager.
Right. It divided the country into administrative units, provinces. I think there were 14 at one point. But the key difference, no emphasis on ethnicity.
Just administration.
Purely administrative boundaries. This actually facilitated movement. People could move around, settle where they needed to for work or family, encouraging what the sources call a culture of pluralistic unity.
People mixed more freely.
Exactly. But post-1991, the Kilo system totally reorganized the land into these ethno-linguistic enclaves. This wasn't just moving lines on a map. It was attaching identity, rights, and belonging to specific, singular territories defined by ethnicity.
Which instantly creates outsiders.
Precisely. It created spatial alienation for anyone who didn't fit that dominant ethnic mold in a given kilo, and this led directly to insecurity, displacement, and tragically violence. The lines decided who belonged, and crucially, who didn't.
And the real-world dangers of this system, the lethal potential, became terrifyingly clear in Adama. That's in the Oromia Kilio, right? In October 2019.
A very stark example.
Witnesses described hearing targeted calls for settlers to leave, and the use of Nefatenya, which is a deeply offensive term, often aimed at Kemakara people, meaning like shooter or armed settler.
A term loaded with historical baggage and hostility.
Yeah. And the sources paint a picture of chaos. Innocent people murdered horrifyingly, even some Oromo people who were maybe seen as not pure enough or who trying to protect others. Property destroyed, like a Muslim merchant store specifically targeted.
It demonstrates how the state itself can generate instability when it uses othering as a primary tool for defining space. The Khalil system essentially baked vulnerability into the map. If you weren't part of the dominant group in that specific territory, you were automatically an other.
And what's deeply disturbing is the reported role, or lack thereof, of security forces. Sources mention police often failing to protect people.
Or worse, in some accounts, appearing to facilitate the violence.
It really underscores how denying formal recognition and territorial belonging to mixed ethnic people strips them of protection.
Absolutely. When violence flares up, who do you turn to? Where do you go? Those with mixed identity, or those who simply identify as Ethiopian without a specific Hillel affiliation, they literally might have no place to go to find safety.
They're exposed.
Utterly exposed. Because the system refuses them a designated space of belonging and, therefore, protection.
It's powerful, though, that the sources don't just dwell on the violence. They also pivot to look at how people resisted this division from the ground up, this idea of working the hyphens horizontally.
Yes, this is the vital counter-narrative. The source material really emphasizes Wuhid Manenet, the mixed identity, not as a problem to be erased, but as a vital national asset for peaceful coexistence.
So the culture itself holds the key to inclusion, even if the politics reject it.
That's the argument, that inclusion is inherent in the society.
And we see this in practice, right? Like at Mount Zagwala, a sacred site in Shawa. The sources describe Oromo and Christian rituals happening there simultaneously.
Side by side, working those language and religious hyphens together.
People calling on God using different names: Oromo, Waka, Amharic, Exia-bearer, Arabic, Allah, all at the same time, with everyone participating, sharing the space equally.
It shows that pluralism doesn't need to be forced from the top down. It can be a natural, lived expression.
And then there's the coffee ceremony, Nubunatetu.
Which literally means, let's drink coffee together. Such a simple, profound invitation.
And the sources frame this as more than just a social gathering. It's a kind of spatial practice, isn't it? A bottom-up alternative to the rigid Kildil spaces.
Exactly. The coffee ceremony creates this incredibly inclusive communal space, often hosted by women in the neighborhood. Neighbors come together regardless of their ethnic background, their economic status, and they talk. They resolve small conflicts. They affirm their community ties.
Through shared rituals, like Gersha.
Yes, Gersha, the act of feeding someone else by hand. It's this beautiful gesture of friendship, trust, and mutual care.
And the coffee itself, served in 3 rounds.
Yeah.
Ebol, Tona, Baraka.
Each with its own meaning, invitation, community strength, and a final blessing. The whole ceremony is steeped in symbolism that fosters connection, not division.
So this tradition, it's like a living blueprint for inclusion. It proves that these localized, horizontal ways of connecting people exist and work.
Right. It suggests the fragmentation isn't inherent in Ethiopian society itself, but rather introduced by the political system.
These practices really stand in stark contrast, don't they?
A direct, almost violent contrast to the top-down, exclusionary, and as we discussed, patriarchal approach that was institutionalized by the EPRDF regime after 1991.
Okay, so let's try to pull this all together. Looking back at our deep dive, the core conflict seems crystal clear. You have this state-imposed Khalil system, organized by political elites along a single ethnic line.
Top-down, rigid.
And it violently clashes with the actual lived reality on the ground, the horizontal pluralistic world embodied by mixed ethnic people and these deep-rooted cultural traditions like Nubunatetu.
The system essentially tried to invert centuries of social cohesion and intermarriage, declaring it irrelevant or even problematic.
So what's the path forward, according to the research?
Well, the sources argue pretty unequivocally that constitutional change is essential to heal this fragmentation and trauma. Meaning the government needs to formally recognize Wuhid Manenet mixed identity, sometimes referred to as KIT. Give it legal standing, end the systemic marginalization, and critically, reverse the patriarchal erasure. Provide equal recognition to the maternal ethnic line within the family unit. Stop making mothers invisible in the official identity of their own children.
It sounds like a fundamental reevaluation of identity and belonging is needed.
At the state level, yes. Aligning the political structure with the social reality.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? The sources we've explored today suggest something quite profound, that the post-1991 system in Ethiopia essentially flipped Immanuel Kant's famous ethical principle on its head.
Kant's idea that you should always treat humanity as an end in itself, never merely as a means to an end.
Right. But this system, it seems, chose to utilize people specifically, the person with mixed ethnicity and the mother within the mixed family as a means to achieve the ruling party's political end of maintaining ethno-nationalist control.
Rather than treating them as ends in themselves, individuals deserving of full dignity and equal rights, regardless of how neatly they fit into a political category.
So the question we want to leave you with is this. What political or social systems, in your own experience, seem to impose identity from the top down? And what might be the hidden human costs when a political goal is prioritized over the inherent dignity and complex reality of the people living within that system?
Something to think about.
Definitely something to mull over. That's all the time we have for this deep dive.